The introductory lecture on strategic management essentials is based on the textbook Strategic Management, a Competitive Advantage Approach, Concepts and Cases by F.R. David and F.R. David. And I'm using that as a reference book for this set of slides. The learning objectives of this session is to describe the strategic management process, discuss the 3 stages of strategy formulation, implementation, and evaluation activities, explain the need for integrating analysis and intuition in strategic management, define and give examples of key terms in strategic management. Now, the first term that we are going to look at is a definition of the term strategic management. Now, many of us have come across this term. Basically, this term means that the management approach used in formulating, implementing, and evaluating cross-functional decisions that enable an organization to achieve its objectives. Now, what do we mean by cross-functional decisions is that in an organization, there are several departments. You have the human resource department, you have the accounting department, you have the finance department, you have the production department. So in strategic management, decisions are made across different functions for the benefit of the organization as a whole. Such decisions are called cross-functional decisions. Now, in defining strategic management, a key element that we need to think about is strategic planning. And strategic planning is important because it provides the bedrock or the foundation for organizations to formulate their strategies, to implement their strategies, and to evaluate the results of the actions taken in the pursuance of those strategies. Now, a strategic plan is basically a company's game plan. It will reflect the organization's commitment to meeting the needs of the market, as well as the policies, procedures, and operations put in place to achieve objectives. Now, the stages of strategic management can be divided into 3 key parts. They are strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and strategy evaluation. Now, let's go through each of these parts to understand the concepts involved. The first part is called strategy formulation, which comprises of the development of a vision for the organization, and with the vision comes the mission on how the vision is going to be achieved. Now, in this process, the organization's managers must also consider several elements, including what are the external opportunities and threats, what are the internal strengths and weaknesses of the organization. They need to also establish the long-term objectives. Now, what we mean by long-term objectives is any objective that is more than 1 year. Now, in the pursuit of the vision and mission, the organization also needs to generate alternative strategies that it wishes to pursue, and which are the strategies that they have decided to pursue in order to achieve the vision and mission of the organization. Now, strategy formulation decisions come in different sizes, different elements. And the core elements that you look at include things like what new businesses the organization wants to enter into, or even what are the businesses or operations that it wishes to abandon in the event that the organization wants to diversify, how they are going to diversify, how they are going to expand their operations, how or actions taken to enter international markets, if the organization wants to merge with another organization or enter into some form of joint venture, and if the organization is subject to a hostile takeover, what efforts can it take to address concerns pertaining to this? Now, in the strategy implementation stage, the decision makers have to think about things like annual objectives, devise different policies, motivate employees, allocate resources, formulate strategies that they wish to execute. And this strategy implementation deals with the action stage. Whatever plans that were made at the strategy formulation stage are now brought into the action stage for these to be implemented. Now, at the strategy evaluation stage, here the focus is to identify if the strategies that were put into action are working well for the organization. Here they are looking at the results. They are evaluating the results to see whether any form of corrective action needs to be taken. Now, there are some key terms that managers need to be familiar with in formulating strategies and implementing these strategies. First term, and one of the more important one, is competitive advantage. Okay, now, what is competitive advantage? It is any activity that distinguishes an organization from its competitors. Okay, or any resource that an organization has which is more outstanding, better than what rival firms possess. So a firm must strive to not only acquire these competitive advantage, but sustain and continue to work on them. A good example here will be McDonald's. Now, many people that I've spoken to enjoy the burgers from McDonald's. One of the reasons that they say that McDonald's burgers are good or tasty, and the other reason is that they always come up with new innovative products. Okay, so this distinguishes McDonald's from all the other competitors, and therefore we term this as a competitive advantage. Now, the strategists of the organization, the people who formulate the strategies, okay, they need to have data, they need to have information, they need to not only formulate strategies, but also analyze and organize information so that other people, other stakeholders are also informed about what is happening, okay, pertaining to the company's activities. Now, I did mention to you about vision and mission statements. So in a vision statement, the question that we are trying to answer is, what do we want to become? What does the organization want to achieve? So it can be said to be a mental picture of a future state that the organization wishes to achieve. Now, in a mission statement, the organization is trying to answer the question, what is our business? Okay. Now, besides this, you also come across terms like external opportunities and threats. Now, when we talk about external opportunities and threats, these are opportunities and threats that arise from the external environment of the organization. So it can come from economic sources, social, cultural, demographic, political, legal, governmental initiatives, technological. A good example of this is COVID-19, which is now creating a threat to many businesses. Okay, for example, the airline industry, the hospitality industry is affected by COVID-19. But at the same time, certain other businesses look at COVID-19 as an external opportunity. A good example is Top Glove, one of the leading glove makers in the world, which has seen its profit grow tremendously in leaps and bounds over the past 1 to 2 years because of COVID-19. Now, when we look at internal strengths and weaknesses of a company, here we are identifying what are the strengths of the company in relation to its competitors. The same thing with weaknesses. Okay, in identifying the weaknesses of an organization, we are trying to identify what distinguishes a competitor in terms of the services, the products that it offers to customers in relation to the company that we are analyzing. Now, some examples of opportunities and threats include things like availability of capital granted by, for example, government initiatives. Consumers expect green operations and products, marketing moving rapidly to the internet, commodity food prices increasing inflation, and oversupply of oil driving oil and gas prices down, or alternatively, as we see now, that an undersupply of oil or lack of oil in the world market is driving up prices of oil and gas. Now, in terms of long-term objectives, here we are looking at the objectives of the organization that are made in respect of a time span of more than 1 year. Okay. Now, strategies, as I mentioned to you earlier, basically these are how organizations put, or actions that organizations put in place to achieve the objectives. So therefore, in achieving the long-term objectives, the actions that are taken by the organization in pursuit of these objectives, we call these strategies. So strategies can also come in different shapes and sizes. So they have different types of strategies, including geographic expansion, diversification, acquisition, product development, market penetration, retrenchment, which we see very often happening nowadays due to COVID-19, or companies closing down due to divestiture or liquidation, or companies being merged into other entities because they are not able to sustain their operations. Now, organizations may also come up with their own annual objectives. Okay, annual objectives are basically objectives for a fixed time period of 1 year, which are measurable, quantitative, challenging, realistic, consistent, and prioritized. Now, this gives the ability of the organization, a tangible means to the organization to measure the performance of their business units and their employees. Policies, on the other hand, help the organization put into place action in order to achieve their annual objectives. We've come to the end of this presentation, this introductory presentation on strategic management. Thank you. This is the second part of the introductory lecture on strategic management, a competitive advantage approach, concepts and cases, taken by the book by F.R. David. Okay, and we are going to look at what we covered in the first part. So in the first part, we looked at describing the strategic management process. We discussed the 3 stages of strategy formulation, implementation, and evaluation. We attempted to explain the need for integrating analysis and intuition in strategic management, and we defined and gave some examples of key terms in strategic management. We are now moving on to the second part of this lecture, introductory lecture, and we are going to look at the following learning objectives, which is to illustrate the comprehensive strategic management model, describe the benefits of engaging in strategic management, explain why some firms do not undertake strategic planning, describe the pitfalls in actually doing strategic planning, and briefly we will see a linkage between business and military strategy. Right? So we start off by basically looking at the strategic management planning model, okay, in terms of where are we now, where do we want to go, and how are we going to get there. Okay, so these three questions are answered through the process of the strategic management model. Okay, and this diagram is a comprehensive strategic management model depiction of each stage, okay, comprising of the three main stages of strategy formulation, strategy implementation, and strategy evaluation. Now, this framework that is depicted here is widely accepted and is a comprehensive model of the strategic management process. Now, this model does not guarantee success, but it does represent a clear and practical approach for formulating and implementing as well as evaluating strategies. Relationships among major components of the strategic management process are shown in this model, which appears in all subsequent lectures that we will undertake, okay, during the course of the program. Right, so our next slide talks about the benefits of strategic management. Okay, so if we look at the benefits, then basically we can sum up the benefits in few key points. Number one, it is a platform or a means of undertaking a proactive as well as a reactive approach in where organizations are able to shape their own future. Now, strategic management also enables the organization to initiate and influence, okay, by undertaking activities to exert some control on the environmental factors that take place in order to determine their own destiny. For example, what is happening during this time of COVID-19? Okay, organizations have to strategize, and therefore strategic management helps organizations to make plans accordingly. Now, in terms of financial benefits, strategic planning enables organizations to look at the possibility of influencing their sales, profitability, as well as their productivity through undertaking systematic planning activities. Now, high-performing firms undertake systematic planning to ensure that they are able to react to any changes in the environment, as well as to undertake any initiative to counter any activities that are happening in the environment. Now, of course, besides financial benefits, there are certain non-financial benefits that accrue to companies because of the process of strategic management planning, including being aware about external threats, understanding what competitors are doing, what are the strategies that are undertaken by competitors. Through strategic analysis, the organization will be able to analyze the actions taken by competitors. Now, they will also, the organization concerned, will be able to also undertake initiatives to increase employee productivity. For example, now certain organizations may need to change their organization structure due to mergers and acquisitions. So through a strategic planning process, uh, the organization can undertake programs to train their staff to improve their productivity in the midst of the changing organization structures that are undertaken. Now, through proper planning, the organization too will have a better framework to reduce any resistance to change, as well as to have a clearer understanding of the performance reward relationship affecting the organization. And now, of course, not all organizations undertake strategic planning. There are some organizations that do not undertake strategic planning. Okay, so therefore, because of this, these organizations may suffer from certain disadvantages, including no formal training for their staff, not understanding or appreciating the benefits of planning, not having a proper framework to reward the staff or the management for doing planning. Okay, there is no punishment instituted or no reprimand instituted for not achieving targets. Okay, and the organization may be too busy with activities of firefighting, okay, on a daily basis due to lack of planning. And some organizations may view planning as a waste of time. However, there is a famous saying, if you plan, if you do not plan, you plan to fail. Okay, so this statement is true in many respects. So today, more and more organizations have undertaken some form of planning. Okay, now besides this, organizations that do not have strategic planning also may have what we call a laziness culture, whereby there will be this lackadaisic approach to the actions taken. Okay, and then these organizations too may be very content with their current success, but they will realize that this success that they have today, there is no guarantee that it will be sustained in the future. Okay, some of these organizations, they are overconfident and they see planning as a waste of resources. And then some organizations too have had bad experiences with strategic planning. Okay, and this too may impede their activities to plan ahead. Okay, now, of course, strategic planning does have some pitfalls, and taking these pitfalls into consideration, the organization, I believe, should be able to plan better. For example, okay, if they are too hasty in matters relating to their vision statement, mission statement, they are not effective in communicating to their employees, okay, not making sure that their employees understand the strategic direction of the organization, not making plans, not making decisions which are based on thoroughly thought out plans. Now, these two will create pitfalls. Therefore, strategic planning is an activity that needs the commitment of every level of staff in the organization. And through this participation, they will be able to avoid such pitfalls. Okay, so there needs to be a collaborative climate, okay, to support the change that is taking place in the organization, and this will enable the organization to move ahead in achieving the plans that it has set for itself. Of course, not all plans may materialize, but the organization should be able to have some form of contingency to address any changes in the environment. Therefore, taking advantage of flexibility and creativity that exist in the organization itself. Now, all these will help the organization towards achieving their mission, vision. Through the setting of objectives and strategies, the organization should be able to accomplish this. So we have come to the end of the second part of this introductory presentation. Thank you. In the third part of the Strategic Management Introduction series, this part we will be looking at comparing the strategic management principles with military strategies. We'll also spend some time looking at the global perspective of strategic management, and we'll also look at the ethical issues surrounding strategic management. Now, it's very important to realize that business strategy has been equated or equaled with military strategy, and the way that militaries plan, militaries implement and evaluate the strategies that they undertake in conquering a country or in defending a country has been equated to the way that businesses are carried out. And therefore, business strategy principles have been passed down from years from military strategies. And one of the most popular military strategists is this person called Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is a Chinese military general who formulated strategies to conquer countries, and he was very, very successful. And over the years, authors have taken his principles and translated this into business strategies. Okay, and that's why there is a lot of books out there that makes comparisons between business strategy and military strategy. Now, on a global perspective, strategic management today has been applied across many different types of businesses, both profit-orientated and not profit-orientated. Now, even public sectors have drawn upon strategic management principles in formulating their strategies, implementing and evaluating these strategies. Therefore, for example, if you look at the statistics that is available out there, you would notice that a vast amount of a country's trade is undertaken through export of goods and services. And therefore, it is imperative that strategic management principles also apply for global trade. Now, therefore, in undertaking strategic management principles in global trade, companies need to be aware about aspects like globalization, where there is a need to do business with companies all around the world. Now, they also need to formulate global strategies around things like designing of products, producing products, marketing products. All these aspects affect a company's global strategy. Now, the global challenge is that how are companies going to formulate strategies based on principles that exist or environment that exists in a particular country and use it across other countries around the world. Now, we have seen successful companies do this, like McDonald's, KFC, Pfizer. Now, these companies, they have been able to undertake this challenge and succeed. So companies need to realize that it's important for them to formulate global strategies in line with strategic management principles, taking account of different tastes,
trends, and prices. Now, the next part of this presentation is on the emphasis of business ethics on strategic management principles. Why ethical considerations are very important today. As you are aware, a lot of companies have taken up initiatives pertaining to sustainability and being environmentally friendly within the strategies that they apply. And therefore, based on these principles, over the years, business ethics have become a core part of strategic management principles. Now, in formulating strategies, companies need to look at their social responsibility, how they can enhance, how they can protect living things, the environment, human beings. Now, besides that, they also need to look at sustainability as a means of ensuring that their operations continue, not only in terms of sustaining their profit levels, but also protect, mend, and preserve the environment for future generations. Now, in terms of business ethics, okay, there are a lot of principles out there that companies need to adhere to. Okay, I've just put up 7 here so that it will give us a basis of looking at how business ethics applies in strategic management principles. Now, one of the key areas that a company can do to instill ethical principles in their strategic management process is to inculcate an ethics culture in their organization so that this will enable the managers, the senior staff to ensure that proper ethical principles are applied across the organization. So a good example of this is to formulate a code of business ethics within the organization. Such a code will help the organization achieve its objective of being an ethical organization. Now, there are many issues that we have come across over the years, which deems to be impacting the ethical culture of an organization. One of the most talked about issues has been whistleblowing, basically referring to employees reporting on unethical violations that they discover or observe within their organization. They also have, over time, organizations have developed ethics training programs so that they can ensure that their staff are well versed with the changes in the ethical business environment. Now, of course, in third world countries and in many developing countries, bribery, corruption is still an issue. So how do international companies deal with this? How do local companies deal with this? So there must be strategies in place to help these companies make this adjustment to ensure that they are abiding by the various rules in the country. Now, workplace romance has been around for many years. Okay, so companies do have proper codes, do have regulations. Some companies are very strict about this. Some companies are quite relaxed. But it is an issue that companies need to look at, and the code of ethics of an organization may be formulated to ensure that this issue is addressed. Now, social responsibility and policy has always been a key concern of organizations. So we have seen people like Ralph Nader, Milton Friedman highlighting these issues. Okay, so organizations too need to look at how they are going to continue to be responsible for the society that they are functioning within, the environment that they are also involved in, and how they can ensure that they carry out their social responsibility. Now, one way to ensure that this happens is to have a policy pertaining to social and environmental issues. Now, these policies will ensure that the interests of the different stakeholders are addressed at the same time that the company is able to participate in social activities to bring economic benefit not only to the organization, to the society, and eventually to the country. Now, environmental sustainability has been a very important issue in organizations, and as I mentioned to you earlier, it will impact the strategic management process of a company. So therefore, not only does the organization need to look at the interests of the stakeholders, but also to ensure that the organization continues to be profitable, as well as contributing to the society, contributing to the environment in ensuring that there is preservation for future generations. We have come to the end of the part 3, but as a means of summarizing, so far we have covered part 1, which has been focused on defining the strategic management process and explaining briefly the different stages. Part 2, we have focused on the benefits and pitfalls of engaging in strategic management process. And in part 3, we looked at the global issues as well as the ethical issues surrounding the strategic planning process. So we've come to the end of part 3.
In this part of the introductory video recording of the strategic management process, we will be evaluating the characteristics of objectives. We will look at the benefits of having clear objectives. We'll also look at some examples of the types of strategies. We will briefly explain the concept of market penetration, market development, product development strategies. We will look at diversification as an effective business strategy. We'll also look at some guidelines for particular strategies like retrenchment, divestiture, liquidation, and we will also look at some of the means of achieving the various strategies mentioned above. Now, for the characteristics of objectives, all objectives should have at least these 8 characteristics, i.e., they should be quantitative, they should be measurable, they should be realistic, they should be understood by both parties, the objectives must be challenging enough, the objectives must have a hierarchical characteristics, it must be obtainable or reachable, and it must be congruent across the departments and contribute to the growth of the organization. Now, long-term objectives, as you are aware, are objectives which are more than a year, and these objectives provide direction for the organization. They allow for synergy to take place. They provide a platform for evaluation. Objectives also provide a means of prioritizing action, reduces uncertainty, especially in the minds of employees in the organization, helps to minimize conflicts, stimulates exertion in terms of the effort that is put into the achievement of these objectives, and it aids both in the allocation of resources and the design of jobs. Now, objectives can be basically put into two categories: financial objectives, which are more quantitative in nature. Okay, so they revolve over things like growth in revenue, growth in earnings, higher dividend, profit margins, etc. And then you also have strategic objectives, which are more qualitative in nature. For example, achieving a larger market share, okay, lower costs than rivals, okay, maybe achieve a wider geographic coverage, or achieve technological leadership. Now, in terms of strategies, there can be different types of strategies in the organization, and these strategies must be combined, okay, combined in such a manner that it will help the organization grow as a whole. Now, I've listed down here in a form of a table taken from the reference textbook, table 4.4, on the different strategies that the organizations may pursue, some of which we will go through shortly, together with the definitions of these strategies and some examples for you to take note. Okay, so for example, if you are looking at related diversification, a definition will be adding new or related products or services. And the example given here is Facebook's acquirement of the text messaging firm WhatsApp for 19 billion US dollars. Now, in terms of strategies, strategies may be divided into several levels. So at the bottom, you have the operational level, then you move up to the functional level, the divisional level, and the corporate level. So from this diagram, you basically can see that it all depends on the size of the organization. Larger organizations should have more levels compared to smaller organizations. But the nature of the decisions, okay, are more or less the same. For example, at the operational level, the decisions are mainly on operational issues, day-to-day issues, week-to-week issues. At the functional level, you will have decisions across different functions like finance, marketing, R&D. And then if there is a divisional level, the decisions are mainly at different divisions of the organization, or certain organizations may be divided into branches. So you have your branch managers or your divisional managers taking charge of decisions. And at the corporate level, you have the chief executive officer or the owner or the president of the organization making the decision as the head of the board of directors. Now, some of the strategies that I provided in the listing earlier include forward integration, which involves gaining ownership or increasing control over distributors or retailers. So you are looking at the supply chain. And then backward integration will be strategies of seeking ownership or increase control of a firm's own suppliers. Horizontal integration deals with seeking ownership or increasing control over the firm's competitors. Market penetration strategy seeks to increase market share for present products or services in the present market, okay, through greater marketing effort. Market development could mean introducing present products or services into new geographic areas. For example, a company that is functioning in Malaysia may look at going into China, for example, or moving into Taiwan. That's called market development. but it basically deals with their present products or services. Product development, on the other hand, seeks to increase sales by improving or modifying present products or services. Now, in terms of diversification, can be either related diversification, where you're looking at the value chains possess competitively valuable cross-business strategic fits, or unrelated diversification, value chains are so dissimilar that no competitively valuable cross-business relationship can exist. Now, there are also certain defensive strategies that firms can take, and we have seen this today due to the present environment that many businesses are faced with. For example, retrenchment, where organizations come out with plans to let go of some of their staff so that they can align their costs, okay, better to cater for the needs of the present environment, or they may want to divestiture, i.e. they may want to sell off a division or part of the organization, or they may want to liquidate certain parts of the organization, maybe close down certain branches, or maybe realign their organization by closing down certain divisions. Now, how do organizations achieve strategies? We've briefly seen some of these strategies. So these strategies can be achieved through cooperation among competitors, going into joint ventures or partnering, maybe through mergers and acquisitions, private equity acquisition, first mover advantage, outsourcing, or reshoring. Okay, and here is just a list of benefits a firm can enjoy by being a first mover. For example, secure access and commitments to rare resources, gain new knowledge of critical success factors and issues, gain market share and position in the best locations. For example, a lot of companies are setting up their head office in Singapore. The reason is because they want to penetrate the Southeast Asian market, which is very attractive at the current moment. Okay, or they want to establish and secure long-term relationships with customers, suppliers, distributors, and investors in this region. Okay, gain customer loyalty and commitment. So we have now covered 4 parts of the introductory lecture. And in the first part, we attempted to define the strategic management process and explain the different stages involved. Part 2, we looked at the benefits and the pitfalls of engaging in strategic management process. Part 3, we focused on the global issues and ethical issues. And part 4, we briefly described some of the strategies that firms may pursue. So we have come to the end of part 4 now. In this part of the presentation, we will look at vision and mission statements and analyze the importance of these statements to strategic management process. So the learning objectives for this set of slides is basically to understand the nature and role of vision and mission statements, understand the process of developing effective vision and mission statements, discuss how clear vision and mission statements can benefit other strategic management activities, describe the characteristics of good mission statements, identify some of the components necessary for effective mission statements, and evaluate mission statements of different organizations, as well as to have an idea of how to effectively write vision and mission statements. So a vision statement basically answers the question, what do we want to become? So basically, when an organization looks at itself, it attempts to answer this question. Everyone in the organization attempts to answer this question. What do we want to become? So vision statement should be short, preferably one sentence, and it can be easily identifiable by anyone who works in that organization. So for example, you can see here, General Motors, very simple statement. General Motors' vision is to be the world leader in transportation products and related services. Or PepsiCo's statement. PepsiCo's responsibility is to continually improve all aspects of the world in which we operate, environment, social, economic, creating a better tomorrow than today. Okay, so that is on the vision statement. Now we move to the mission statement. So the mission statement is a declaration of an organization's reason for being. So it basically answers this important question: what is our business? Okay, so it is an essential statement which effectively drives the organization's need to establish objectives and formulate strategies. Now, it reveals what an organization wants to be and whom it wants to serve. Okay, so basically, the mission statement can be equated to a purpose statement, the reason for the existence of the organization. So there are different ways of defining it. It can be defined as a creed statement, a statement of philosophy, a statement of beliefs, statement of business principles, etc. So in developing vision and mission statements, there is a process that needs to be undertaken. Okay, and normally this should involve different levels of staff in the organization as well as managers themselves. Okay, it can be that the management asks the staff to make suggestions, and then there is a committee that goes through this and then picks the best one and then provides a rationale for the choice. Now, such an effort will bring the ownership factor into the creation of vision and mission statement in the organization, where everyone at all levels are involved in its development. So why are mission and vision statements important? Okay, number one, it ensures that everyone in the organization understands the purpose of the firm or organization. It enables the prioritization of internal and external factors which are necessary for the formulation of effective strategies. It provides a basis so that resources can be allocated to the needs of the organization, and it also provides a fundamental platform for the organization of work, the organization of departments and structuring of the organization, how activities in the organization take place, who is responsible for what, and at the same time providing a common purpose for the organization. Now, there are 10 benefits of having a clear mission and vision statement. Okay, so number one, it achieves clarity of purpose. Everyone in the organization knows the purpose of the organization. It provides the basis for strategic planning. It gives direction for the organization's effort. It provides a focal point for the stakeholders of the organization. Okay, it helps to resolve any divergent views that the managers may have, that the employees may have. It promotes a sense of shared expectation among all managers and employees. And it also projects a sense of worth and intent for all stakeholders. It gives an organized, motivated organization that is worthy of support by everyone, stakeholders internal and external. It provides a platform for organization performance to be measured, and it gives synergy for the actions of managers, divisions, sections, departments, employees, etc. So characteristics of a mission statement. Basically, a mission statement should allow for some flexibility, okay? But at the same time, it also must provide a means of effectively reconciling the needs of different stakeholders within its structure. Okay, so who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders are anyone who has an interest in the organization or the organization has an interest in them. So there are a variety of stakeholders, including employees, managers, shareholders, stockholders, board of directors, unions, environmental groups, and the general public. So there are 9 important components that a mission statement should address. Number 1, customers. Who are the firm's customers? Products or services. What are the firm's major products or services? Markets. Geographically, where does the firm compete? Technology. Is the firm technologically current? Survival, growth, and profitability. Is the firm committed to growth and financial soundness? Philosophy. What are the basic beliefs, values, aspirations, and ethical priorities of the firm? Self-concept or distinctive competence. What makes the firm different from its competitors? Okay, what are the major competitive advantages of the firm? Okay, what is the public image of the firm in terms of how society perceives it, how community perceives it? Okay, is the firm putting concern to environmental issues? Okay, and how does it perceive its employees? Okay, so all these are aspects that must be addressed in the mission statement. But we will look at some examples shortly, okay, and we will notice that not all mission statements actually address all these 9 aspects. Some of them may take into consideration 3 or 4 or 5. But most of these statements address a majority of the 9 aspects that were discussed. For example, if you look at Pepsico, okay, you will notice that it lacks 3 components, i.e. customers, technology, and distinctive competence. Okay, and in the case of Royal Caribbean, you have 6 components that are missing: customers, product, services, markets, technology, survival, growth and profit, and public image. Okay, but it's relatively long, 86 words. Okay, so we will be assessing. You can look at different companies' mission statements and see whether these mission statements actually do address these 9 components. Okay, there are some, of course, that do address all 9. For example, if you look at Avon here, okay, it's only 58 words long, but it actually addresses each one of the 9 components that was discussed earlier. Same goes with Royal, 85 words, and it also addresses all the 9 characteristics that were mentioned. So, as your own personal exercise, you may look at your own organization's mission statement and evaluate based on the 9 characteristics whether these 9 characteristics are effectively addressed by your organization's mission statement. Okay, so we've come to the end of this part where in conclusion, just a summary that we looked at the importance of vision, mission statements. We looked at the characteristics of effective vision, mission statements, okay, and why these characteristics are important. And we also looked at some samples of vision and mission statements.
In part 6 of this presentation, from the strategic management competitive advantage approach, concepts and cases, 17th edition by F.R. David and F.R. David. We will look at the internal environment and why assessing the internal environment is important to the strategic management planning process. The learning objectives of this set of slides will focus on the nature and role of internal assessment and why it is important in the formulation of strategies. We will look at the organization culture briefly and its importance in formulating strategies. And we'll also identify some of the basic functions undertaken by management and its relevance in formulating strategies. Now, distinctive competencies can be defined as a firm's strengths that cannot be easily matched or imitated by competitors. Therefore, in building a competitive advantage, an organization needs to take advantage of its distinctive competencies. An important activity that management must do or undertake on a periodic basis is to conduct an internal audit of its competencies, strengths, and even its weaknesses. So, in undertaking this internal audit process, the organization needs to gather, assimilate, and prioritize information about the various functions within its structures. And through this process, they'll be able to identify where the opportunities arise for the members of the organization and how this can be taken advantage of in the performance of the jobs and tasks within the organization. Now, an important criteria that needs to be considered in the formulation of strategies is the organization culture. The organization culture can be defined as a pattern of behavior that has been developed by an organization as it learns to cope with its problems of external adaptation and internal integration, and that has worked well enough to be considered valid and to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive and think and feel. Now, this is a very long definition, but if you would like to a much briefer one, then basically an organization culture depicts the way work is done in an organization. So, for example, you may have two organizations which are very similar in terms of the products and services that they provide, but the way that the work is done in the organization may be different. And that is where organization culture comes into play. Now, another key element that needs to be considered in performing an internal audit is to look at the functions that are performed by management. And basically, there are 5 key functions that are performed by management, and they comprise of planning, which deals with forecasting, establishing objectives, devising strategies, and developing policies. Then you have organizing, which deal with the organizational design, job specialization, preparation of job descriptions, determining of span of control, coordination, job design, and job analysis. Then you have the aspect of motivating, i.e., how the leadership in the organization motivates the staff, what sort of mechanisms they use to facilitate work groups, behavior modification, communicational aspects, delegation of authority, adapting to organizational change, motivating employee morale, as well as keeping managerial morale high. Then you have the aspect of staffing, which deals with employee management, things like wage and salary, administration, recruitment, termination, and dealings with the union. Finally, you have the aspect of controlling, and this is where aspects like quality control, financial control, sales control, inventory control, expense control, analysis of variances, determination of rewards, as well as sanctions, okay, are facilitated. Now, a key element in undertaking any management project will be to perform what is called a cost-benefit analysis. Now here basically the focus is to determine what is the cost of the project and to compare this against the benefits that can be derived from the project. Of course, the expectation is that benefits must far outweigh the costs, okay, to justify the reason for undertaking a particular project. Now we have come to the end of this set of slides, and to summarize the key points, we have seen the importance of the internal environment. We have looked at the use of internal audit. What is the impact of organizational culture on strategic management? We have also looked at some of the basic roles of management and why there is a need to conduct a cost-benefit analysis. In part 7 of this session on the internal and external environment, we will be looking at the external environment. The learning objectives of this set of slides is basically to describe the nature and purpose of an external assessment in formulating strategies. We'll also look at 10 external factors that must be examined in formulating strategies, which include economic, social, cultural, demographic, environmental, political, governmental, legal, technological, and competitive. And then we will also briefly look at one of the more famous models, Porter's 5 forces model, and its relevance in formulating strategies. Now, in the earlier set of slides in part 6, we looked at the internal audit. So here we'll be looking at the external audit, which basically focuses on identifying and evaluating trends and events beyond the control of a single firm, which will help the firm or organization identify key opportunities and threats that confront an organization and will help the managers in formulating strategies to take advantage of these opportunities, as well as to institute measures or strategies to avoid
and reduce the impact of threats. The external audit plays a very important role in identifying key variables that need the organization or firm to take action. Therefore, firms should be able to respond either offensively or defensively to these factors so as to take advantage of the external opportunities and or minimize the impact of potential threats. Now, external forces that impact an organization can be put into 5 main categories, and they are economic forces, social, cultural, demographic, and natural environmental elements, political, government, and legal forces, technological elements, as well as competitive forces that affect a particular firm. So the process of performing an external audit will be first to look at the competitive intelligence and information from the economic, social, cultural, demographic, environmental, political, governmental, legal, and technological elements, and then to assess this information uh, in a holistic manner so as to identify what are the opportunities and threats in the environment. Now, this information must be assimilated and evaluated, and then a final list of those key important elements need to be communicated to those who are involved, especially at the decision-making level. Now, if you look at this set of slides, there are a host of economic elements that will affect an organization. So we have things like availability of credit, disposable income, propensity of people to spend, interest rates, inflation rates, GDP trends. You have price fluctuations. You have elements of foreign countries, economic conditions, especially if the company or the firm is involved in international trade. You also have impacts of certain types of international organizations like OPEC, which will also affect not only a particular country, but also firms in that country or organizations in that country. Here is an example of an important influence on a firm, especially pertaining to strong US dollar. Okay, so if a strong US dollar is being experienced, then for a country that is importing goods and the denomination that is used is US dollars, then there will be an impact on the cost of the imports to that company. Now, if a company is also exporting goods denominated in US dollars, that too will be impacted by the movement of the US dollar. Now, other elements that can be looked at include social, cultural, demographic, and natural environmental variables. So we have things like number of marriages, number of divorces, immigration and immigration, social security programs, per capita income, attitude toward product quality, attitude toward customer service, pollution control, energy conservation, social programs, okay, social responsibility issues. All these will impact a firm. Now, as you are aware, technology has taken many firms in to move towards doing business on new platforms. So technological forces too will impact an organization, and these can be in the form of things like Internet of Things, 3D printing,
the importance of the cloud, mobile devices, biotech, analytics, autotech, robotics, and artificial intelligence. Now, many firms have also uh, restructured their organization to take advantage of certain opportunities that may appear in the environment. So a good example here is that many firms today have a position for Chief Information Officer or Chief Technology Officer. So these two positions are created to take advantage of opportunities arising in the environment and how the organization can take advantage of information and technology, okay, and help this to formulate policies, procedures within the organization to optimize on opportunities arising from the external environment. So we have seen that technological advances have impacted many organizations. So one of these is how competitors react to these advances. What are they doing to take advantage? And that can give us a direction, give our organization a direction as to the initiatives, as to the policies that we need to take advantage of. Now, there also can be opportunities in terms of management of costs, okay, to create new technical skills in the organization so that the organization can upgrade their employees' skills and expertise in the advancement of new technology. Now, competitive forces remain an important element that impacts an organization. So an organization needs to look constantly at the competitive forces that are impacting on it and to ensure that the organization can optimize on its strengths to take advantage of opportunities that are appearing in the environment, as well as to deter threats and how these may impact the organization. Now, some of the characteristics of a competitive company would involve striving to continually increase market share, use the vision, mission as a guide for all decisions, whether the company is broke or not, to fix it, make it better, to find ways to improve the company, to adapt, to innovate, to improve, where there may be a need to acquire another company, or there may be a need to merge or even enter into a joint venture. Companies may need to look at how they want to hire and retain best employees and managers and strive to stay competitive in the global marketplace. Now, what are the models that you would come across in your studies would be the five forces model of competition by Porter. Now, this is a very important model, and basically the model helps to identify key aspects or elements of each competitive force that impact the firm, evaluate how strong and important these elements are, and decide whether the collective strength of the elements is worth the firm entering or staying in the industry. Now, very important for the organization to be aware about external sources of information. So you can get sources which are unpublished as well as published. And with the internet today, organizations have an influx of knowledge or information. Therefore, it is important for the organization to vet through this information and ensure that they have a means of identifying what is relevant and what can impact the organization's decision making. Now, these are some sites that organizations can look at to get information. Of course, this is
This list is not exhaustive. There are very much more out there. But what is important is that there must be a way to vet through this information and to ensure that the sources that provide this information are relevant and reliable. Now, business analytics today has taken organizations by storm. There are a host of softwares out there to manage huge volumes of data, and this too can provide a way for executives to make decisions. So we've come to the end of part 7, and a summary of the key points covered here include the importance of both the internal and the external environment. We saw the internal environment in part 6 and external environment in part 7. The importance of having correct and up-to-date information, and the increasing use of business analytics to make forecasts, help managers make decisions.